Let's we'll get this over here live. Okay. And I should do it. And I'm letting button up. We're live. Boom. Okay. So we the past few weeks that the of Kiddush HaChodesh, as the Minchas Chinuch describes, and as we have learned in the Sefer HaChinuch, has two essential components to it. One is the essential component that the Beis Din has to do a significant amount of intricate and complex calculations in order to understand.
One time.
Well,
it'll last for a while.
Right. So then they need to no, every month Mikra Din. You have to make sure that yeah, everybody knows, right? Meaning, as we pointed out, like David and Jonathan are having this conversation, saying tomorrow is going to be Rosh Chodesh. How do you know that tomorrow is going to? Because they know the calculations, right? That was not that people that understood how all of these things work. It was not a secret, but it requires an immense amount of deep understanding as to astronomy and the movement of celestial bodies and mathematics and physics, and none of this was 100% simple. As by the way, like you ever go outside and you look at a star and be like, "Hey, I wonder what that star is." We have no clue. We know nothing, right? We're like, I've got an app that can show you what stars things are, and it's actually very cool to understand. But the Beis Din was very, very well familiar and very well versed in all of these dinim, and they needed to be, because as we pointed out, the din is that the witnesses are going to come and they're going to say, "I saw the moon rising, new moon rising over that hill at that point in time at the night," and the Beis Din is going to do Drusha v'Chakira. They're going to have to investigate. They're going to have to say, "What did you see? What did it look like? Where were you standing? Where was the moon? How did it appear? What did it look like? East side, west side, north side, south, whatever." And the Beis Din needs to know if the Eidim are telling the truth, which means that they need to know what to expect. It also means, and this was fundamental question number one, the Minchas Chinuch asked the question, well, if that's the case, so why do you need the witnesses? Meaning, we know that a month is either going to be 30 days, 29 days, and then the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh, or 30 days, and the 31st day is going to be Rosh Chodesh. Those are the options. Right? Those are the options. It's never going to go shorter than that, never going to go longer than that. It's simply a question of, once you know when the previous Kiddush Levana was, but the previous time that you had a new moon, so that calculation is something that once you know, you're good. So if they know it, what do you need the witnesses for? So the Minchas Chinuch explained, based on the Rambam, based on the Sefer HaChinuch, that in order to have a Rosh Chodesh, what you need is apparently both the Beis Din doing the calculations and the witnesses showing up, right? You need both. That the witnesses are not providing with new information. That's not what's going on, right? As opposed to every other kind of, or most other kinds of witnessing, where witnesses provide you with information, these witnesses don't provide you with information. They come to do something, whatever their purpose is. It's not to provide information, because that information is already information that we know. Which is why the lashon of the Gemaras and the lashon of the Sefer HaChinuch is that it's a mitzvah l'kadosh al pi hariyah, that there's a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah for the Beis Din to be mekadosh al pi hariyah, based on the sighting of the moon by the witnesses. Good. Then we ask the question, which is what we dealt with in great detail last week. We introduced it 2 weeks ago, explained it last week. If that is so then according to the Rambam, it seems very clear that if the witnesses didn't show up on day 30, so then when's Rosh Chodesh by definition? Next day. Day 31 is day 1, right? By definition. If there's a mitzvah to be mekadosh al pi hariyah, if there's a mitzvah to make it Rosh Chodesh based on the witnesses, so then how do you make a Rosh Chodesh without witnesses showing up? You know that today is Rosh Chodesh. Yeah, that's true, but you knew yesterday that it was going to be Rosh Chodesh as well. Yesterday you didn't need the witnesses, and yet there's a mitzvah to have witnesses. Today, why not have witnesses? So it was on that the Minchas Chinuch is mechadish, that based on the principle of Anan Sahadi, that Everybody's a witness. This is now such an obvious truth that it is as if you have witnesses even without you having witnesses. There are witnesses. Who's the witness? Everybody. This is now, everybody is providing this as a truth. We gave the example of a couple that moves into town. I haven't seen any of your ksubas, right? I haven't seen your ksuba. How do I know that you're married? I wasn't at your wedding. How do I know that you're married? Anan Sadi, right? A couple moves into town. They have the same last name and they have children. You don't say, "Well, no, they're not married." Anan Sadi, that becomes a obvious reality.
Legally or religiously, depends where you are.
I'm saying lahalacha, we right? But lahalacha, we said that you're married. Lahalacha, we said that you're married to the extent that you have a couple that would move into a town. Nobody here, Khalila, right? A couple would move into town, and then the husband would go off on a business trip and not come back. So we'd say to the wife, where's your husband? And she says, I don't know. We lost. I don't know. He turned off his phone, or maybe the plane went down. The ship capsized. He was captured by Somali pirates. I don't know. But there's good news. Good news is that we were never really married, so I can remarry. Right? We were never really married. We would say to her, no. I should say, but we were never married. We were never married. Of course you were married. How do you know that we were married? Anan Saadi, right? We know that you're married. Because every part of your life has indicated that you are married. That's called Anan Saadi, right? We all bear witness. We are the collective witnesses to this reality. That's the din of Anan Saadi. And we have this in many, many cases. Okay. We then spent a little bit of time looking in the Likutei Halachos Rav Nassim Breslov. What was the value of having these of having the calculation by Beis Din? And we pointed out that there is a phenomenon in the world, in life in general, of darkness and light, and the job of Beis Din is to use knowledge to figure out where the dividing point is between light and darkness, and how to harness those moments to do something meaningful and intelligent. In order to differentiate between light and darkness, you need seichel. It's a bracha that you make every morning. What bracha? Nah. Close. Right? No? Hanoisein lesechvi bina lavchin ben yom ben laila. Right? Hanoisein lesechvi bina. So there's machlokes what sechvi means. Doesn't mean the rooster, but does sechvi mean the seichel. Right? Hashem gave us the intelligence to be able to differentiate between darkness and light, between night and day. That's not a simple thing to do. It requires an immense amount of understanding. And this is true in terms of the physics of it. Figuring out when the beginning of the day is and when the end of the night is not a simple thing to do. Even if you go online, you look at like Zmanim websites. So
the Gemara breaks it up.
Right.
There's multiple sections.
Right, and figuring out
that you wouldn't even think exist, but they exist.
Right. But even with those definitions, figuring out where the definitions apply to is complicated. If you go like the Zmanim websites, they'll tell you like what time is Halosh HaShachar, like what time is dawn. But then you go to the extended options, and it's like, well, which dawn are you talking about? Are you talking about dawn at sea level? Are you talking about dawn at your current elevation? Are you talking about dawn 11 degrees below the horizon or 16 degrees below that? I mean, there's 1,000 different shittas on like how to figure out what dawn is. And that's like the easiest one to figure out, right? Shkia is like impossible. There's a billion different shittas of what sunset is, right? And what nightfall is. And all of these things are complicated. Figuring all of these things out are not a simple thing to do. And that's true physically in terms of the astronomy of it. But trying to figure out what all of these things are emotionally and cognitively and intellectually and spiritually are hugely difficult. Like somebody's going through like a really hard time with their family, with their job, with their kids, whatever it is. And you want to be able to inspire them to differentiate between darkness and light. That's not like an easy thing to do. Like how are you supposed to differentiate? Like how do you give somebody that seichel to be able to share a piece of information that's going to be useful, that's going to be helpful, that's going to be enlightening, that's going to give a person a sense of understanding that they wouldn't have had otherwise. That requires tremendous depth and profundity of thought. That is called Beis Din, right? That's what the job of the Beis Din is, the Sanhedrin HaGedolah. Their job, their role, is to superimpose their knowledge of reality onto a situation of darkness and say, in this moment of darkness, there is an opportunity for light, and we are going to do that calculation. We're going to spend time figuring it out. The Chachamim are the spiritual, emotional, psychological, cognitive scientists of the Jewish people. Their job is to figure out how to direct Klal Yisrael through moments of darkness into moments of light. That's the job of the Beis Din. That's the job of the Chachamim. And with that in mind, we left off with the question last week. So then, what's the role of the Eidim? Why do you need witnesses at all? Like, what's the purpose of having these witnesses? Now, we should point out, and the Rambam makes this point clear, is that the role of Beis Din, just before we get to witnesses, the role of Beis Din doing the calculation is not simply to be able to know if the witnesses are correct or incorrect. That's a function of what they know. But Kiddush al Pi HaCheshbon, to do this, like to figure out what exactly the calculation is part and parcel. That's the primary aspect of the mitzvah. It's not tertiary. It's not just to know if the witnesses are telling the truth. It is an ikar, as we explained last week. That is the ikar as far as Beis Din is concerned. Which makes it more complicated to understand what is the point of the witnesses. Now, before we can...
What if the calculations are lost? Then you need another alternate method.
Well, that's true, but if the calculations are lost, then you won't... Correct, then you won't be able to accept the witnesses. Right? You need to know if the witnesses could be telling the truth. Right? Okay, take a look on page Nun Vav. We're just going to see it inside of the Sefer HaChinuch. To review that inside of the Sefer HaChinuch, not even the Minchas Chinuch, the primary text, it's going to require a bunch of page turning because, that's how it goes. He says like this, Ve'inyan ha-mitzvah ken, what is this mitzvah? Shebon shnei Yisraelim, you have two Jews that come, turning over a bunch of pages here, to page Samach Dal, Kesherim, they have to be kosher, Livnei ha-Beis Din, in front of the Beis Din, U'me'idin, and they testify b'fneihem in front of them. That they saw the new moon in its renewal phase, right? They saw the moon appearing new. And then the Beis Din, the job of the Beis Din is to then use this testimony, which they know to be correct because they've investigated, they've tested them. We're going to use their testimony to ensure that we've established the month as the new moon based on this Shayam Kodesh, and today is Rosh Chodesh. Says the Chinuch, V'tam she'ein mitzvah zu ela b'smuchim. Why is it that you need to make sure that the people that are declaring at Rosh Chodesh are smuchim, have original smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu? Lefi shebawa b'perish hachodesh hazeh lachem. Because when the Torah is describing this mitzvah, the Torah says hachodesh hazeh lachem. This month is for you. Who's he talking to? Hashem is talking to? Who's getting the mitzvah? No. Beginning of the end of Parashat Bo. Who's being told? Everyone who's leaving. But who's hearing this mitzvah? It's not a trick question. Moshe and Aaron. Right? Moshe and Aaron get the nevuah. Right? Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron, this month is Rosh Chodesh. This new moon that you're seeing here, this is Rosh Chodesh. This is the new month for you. It has to be people like you. People like you. They are going to be the people doing the calculation. This was said directly to Moshe and Aaron. And then Hashem says, tell this message to the entirety of the Jewish people. That is to say, that the people that do this are doing it authority of the entirety of the Jewish people. You can't do it without the acquiescence of the Jewish people, because this is done on behalf of the entirety of the Jewish people. Bless you. These have to be great Jews amongst the Jewish people, that people are going to accept what they are doing. Based in Hagadol. For example, the based in Hagadol. Now, this happens to be a machlokas between the Rambam and the Ramban. Whether Kagoin based in Hagadol, it has to be like the based in Hagadol, or Dafka based in Hagadol. Right? That's the machlokas Rambam and Ramban. Who exactly is charged with this mission? We'll see if we have time to deal with some of those details in a bit. It says, V'chein kol mishu chacham gadol b'Yisrael, anybody that is a great chacham in the Jewish people, v'nismach b'Eretz Yisrael, and has gotten smicha in Eretz Yisrael, v'hasmichos yadua eich osim asai, and it's known how you are supposed to give smicha. Yesh lo rishus la'asos mitzvah zu afilu b'chutz la'aretz. They have the authority to declare Rosh Chodesh even if they happen to be in chutz la'aretz. V'hu shelo hinech k'moseh ba'aretz, and that is with the understanding that they haven't left anybody in Eretz Yisrael that is of that stature. So, like the Gemara says, v'chen matzinu she'aso ken Chanani ben Achi Rabbi Yeshua v'Akiva ben Yosef shehayu b'inyan zeh. We see this at Rabbi Chanan ben Shkoyach ben Achi Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. They did this in Chutz La'aretz. On page Samach Daled in the Chinuch. Yeah. So it says, "Aval bilti t'nai." Without this, ein reshus l'shum adam yisrael likva chodashim la'aver shanim. Without this, nobody has the authority to do this. So what you need is the Beis Din. That you see that this is the major work here, is making sure that this Beis Din to do the calculation. They have the authority, they have the know-how, and they have the acquiescence of the entirety of the Jewish people. They are the ones that are doing the calculation, accepting the testimony, and declaring the month to be Mekudesh. Okay. Thereafter, we've covered this, that you asked the question, so then how do we have Rosh Chodesh today? So we said today we have Hillel, who created the calendar, was Mekadesh all of the Chodashim Kovea. He set up all of the Chodashim until Mashiach arrives. It happens to be an interesting question. You'll see here, 3 lines from the bottom. It says, "Who Kiddush HaChodesh v'ibru shanim ha'asidim b'lavo ad sheyavo Eliyahu," until Eliyahu comes. V'al zeh anu som chamayim. This is what we rely on. What does he say until Eliyahu comes?
He wants Mashiach because Eliyahu is supposed to proceed. But why does he turn around and say that it can't? When 51% of the Jews live in Israel, that we can't turn around and say now we want to go back and do this.
So this is
So this basically says you cannot do that anymore.
Right. So this is an interesting and important question. We'll give just a little bit of historical information here. That's important to understand. In the mid 1500s, early 1500s, there was a group of Jews that arrived from Spain and Portugal to Eretz Yisrael. They desperately wanted to reestablish a Sanhedrin. Why did they want to reestablish a Sanhedrin? Because they wanted to get Malchus
for themselves.
Yes. Why? Right. Good question. Right. Why did they want Malchus?
Tax evasion.
Tax, right? That's offshore bank accounts sponsored by Malchus. No. They wanted to get Malchus. Why did they want to get Malchus? They wanted to get Malchus because there's a din. It's arguable, but let's assume that all of the things that we're saying are, because this was the cheshbon, that this is correct. Is that here's the calculation: is the Rambam writes that if a person is chayv kares and they get Malchus, they potter from kares. So you were supposed to have kares, which could mean one of a number of things: either a person's going to die early, or they're going to die childless, or their children are going to die in their lifetime, or they are going to have some kind of spiritual excision from the Jewish people after they move from this world to the next. None of this stuff is pleasant. None of this is something that you're looking forward to, certainly. So they wanted to avoid that. They wanted to avoid that. How do you avoid getting kares? So the Rambam says that if you get Malchus, that'll remove the chiyuv of kares.
What did they do?
So what did they do? So this is the important piece, the historical piece, is these were Marranos. They had converted to Christianity during the Spanish Inquisition. They went into hiding, they became Marranos, and then during the expulsion, they fled Spain. Meaning 1492, they escaped Spain. The historical piece that's important to understand is the Inquisition and the expulsion were not the same thing. For a few decades before October 1492, there was the Inquisition. The Inquisition was attempting to find Jews that had converted to Christianity but weren't real Christians. They were fake Christians. They were secret Jews. Right? Those were Marranos. In 1492, they kicked out all the Jews. All the Jews. Those that remained went even deeper into hiding, and many of them were lost completely, and some of them survived as Jews for a number of generations. But the Jews that were kicked out in the late 1400s, some of them ended up escaping to Portugal. Those became the Spanish-Portuguese Jews. But either which way, there was a whole group that arrived in Tzfas, in Eretz Yisrael, and they had converted to Christianity. Now that is an Issa D'Oraisa. The din is that if somebody says to you convert to Christianity or die, the din is that you're supposed to say, Yarek al Yavra, I'd rather give up my life than convert to Christianity, even if you're going to be a secret Jew, right? That's you're over an Isser. You're not supposed to stay alive and be a Christian, right? Convert to Christianity. You're supposed to give up your life. So they were Ovdei Avodah Zarah, which is a Chiyuv Kares. They wanted to not have a Chiyuv Kares anymore, so they wanted to have Malchus. There's a problem, though. In order to get Malchus, what you need is a Beis Din that has the authority to give you Malchus. 23, but that Beis Din of 23 has to have Smicha. They have to be Smuchim, which means that they have to have the original Smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Which we've lost. We lost in the 300s, 400s. That was over. So they're at least 1,000 years too late to have a Beis Din of Smuchim to give them Malchus to get out of the Isur Kares. So good. Okay.
So why didn't they fast? Because you can also fast to get rid of Kares.
Maybe. That might work.
They couldn't donate to Kabbalah?
No. There was no telephone. It's right. It's, they didn't have 16 hours of dancing Chabadnikim on TV. They didn't have TV. It's
Who's the rabbi who said that you
Rabbeinu Gershom.
Gershom, sorry. So in about 500 years before then, he proclaimed one of the Gzerot is somebody who converts to Christianity, you have to welcome them back and allow them to
Yes.
do tshuva.
Yes, there was Takanas
Hashem. When he said that.
Yeah, that's Takanas Hashem. It means because we're trying to minimize your Isurim.
So how do you do tshuva if there was no?
Excellent. It's a good question.
He did it because his son converted and died. Fine.
Right.
But
that's not why he said it. But, meaning,
everything has a bias.
Yes, but we assume that Chachamim don't paskin things based on personal biases. That's just a klal gadol. It's a klal gadol. What?
The same thing with the vaccines. When there was a controversy a few years ago, one side said yes, one side said no.
We assume that the Chachmei HaTorah did not put in personal preferences and biases.
No.
But again, how are you supposed to get tshuva without getting Malchus is a separate question. This is the historical fact. What happened was they attempted to restore a Beis Din.
And they were not successful.
Well, sort of, maybe ish, could be. What do we mean? Is that it might be that the Rambam suggests that if all the Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael would get together and give smicha to somebody, that would restore smicha.
But then you would need 20. That person would give it to 22 other people.
Correct.
Okay.
But that person would now be
like a restart.
Would now be royal smicha. Yeah, they would have the original smicha, meaning that would restart the original smicha. So it did, but not without major controversy. The controversy was twofold. One is that the correct reading of the Rambam, and even if that is the correct reading of the Rambam, is the Rambam correct? That you can do this. That was technical questions. But then there were practical questions that the Rabbanim that got together to give smicha didn't include all the Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael, because the Rabbanim in Yerushalayim were like, no, we're not part of this. There was Rabbanim in Tzfat and there were Rabbanim in Yerushalayim. The Rabbanim in Yerushalayim said, who said that you can do this?
So it wasn't unanimous.
So it was not
It
unanimous.
invalidates
Right.
the loophole in and of itself.
Right. So it happens. Right. It happens to be that who did they give smicha to? Rav Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch. Rav Yosef Karo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, got that smicha. He got that smicha.
So does it continue to that?
No, because
How did it stop?
it was controversial. So he did not give smicha.
Okay, but didn't he give smicha to anybody
No.
else?
No. To the best of our knowledge, he did not. He did not continue that smicha. Although there are those that have argued that because he got smicha, it was on that koyach that he became the Marad Asher, that his opinion was accepted. Meaning he had spiritual stolz that everybody else in the world that was writing Sefer HaChinuch didn't necessarily have. Say what? This was probably pre-publishing of the Shulchan Aruch, right? I mean, he probably had written the Beis Yosef by this point already, but had not yet published the Shulchan Aruch. Meaning, ostensibly, the Shulchan Aruch was published with the smicha, whatever it was. However, so that is one way that we're going to get smicha back. There is another way. What's the other way? What the Chinuch just told us. No. Mashiach doesn't have smicha.
He needs smicha.
Yes, Mashiach's going to... Well, no, Mashiach means oil. That's anointing with oil.
You need the smicha in order to anoint it with oil.
Right. So how are you going to do it? Eliyahu Hanavi. Why Eliyahu Hanavi?
Never died. And that's
Because he never died and he had smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu.
But isn't Avraham Avinu also supposed to come as well?
Yes, but he didn't have smicha from Moshe Rabbeinu.
Who else is supposed to join him? There's like a whole list of people.
There's Chevra. But Eliyahu Hanavi is alive today and has smicha. He's the one. He's the one that has smicha. He is the one that has smicha. So this is what the Chinuch is implying here. He says, "Who Kiddush HaChodesh v'Ibra Hashem la'asim la'voy ad she'yavoy Eliyahu." Once Eliyahu Hanavi comes, so he'll restart the Sanhedrin because he's got smicha.
And then he can give it out.
Right? He can give smicha, which means that we'll be able to do Kiddush HaChodesh in the original way. Right? That's the catch-all. Right? That's how we're going to figure out to do Kiddush HaChodesh. Now it happens to be that the Rama probably doesn't hold like this, because there's a shaila whether Eliyahu Hanavi is alive today in spirit, right? That for sure. He comes to the Seder, he comes to the bris. Is he alive physically today? So the Rambam has a hard time saying yes, but all of the other Rishonim say yes, he is physically alive today, and sometimes shows up in bodily form. The Chasam Sofer has an interesting tshuva where he asked the question. It's a fascinating question. We pass Leba Shamayim, right? So if you have a debate between two chachamim, and somebody says I have Ruach HaKodesh to say that this is the din, so we say Lo b'shamayim here, that you have no authority. You have no authority on this. Why? Because Lo b'shamayim, it's given over to the basin. It's given glat over to the basin. This, by the way, they tell a Maisa that there was a farmer that came, I think, to the Baal Shem HaKadosh, and he had a lot of complaints because every time he shechted an animal, the animal was a treifa. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Like every animal that I shecht, so I end up losing a ton of money. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So the Baal Shem Tov said to him, "You have names for your animals?" He said, "Yes." So he said, "Give me the list of names for your animals." He went through the list and he said, "This one's kosher, this one's treif, this one's kosher, this one's treif." And then there was like a whole bunch. He's like, "And these ones I don't know." So the farmer looks at him and goes, "What do you mean? These ones are kosher, these ones are treif. How come you don't know?" He says, "No. This one I can tell you, Al Pi Ruach HaKodesh, has no treifus in it. This one I can tell you, Al Pi Ruach HaKodesh, does have treifus. These ones have a shaila. You have to go ask the Rav. I can't paskin on Ruach HaKodesh. That's awesome. Lo b'shamayim, you're not allowed to paskin on Ruach HaKodesh. I can tell you what the shaila is, but I can't tell you how to paskin. You don't paskin on Ruach HaKodesh. Lo b'shamayim. So the Chasam Zavar asked the question. He says sometimes you find Eliyahu Hanavi shows up in the Gemaras and we pass him based on what he says, and sometimes we don't pass him based on what he says. So which is which? So he says when Eliyahu Hanavi shows up as a neshama that is telling you something in a dream or whatever the case is, that's Ruach HaKodesh. But if he shows up in flesh and blood, so then you can listen to him. He's got smiches. He's a big Talmid Chacham. You're allowed to listen to what he says. Yeah, you don't have to agree with him, but you're allowed to. Right? You can debate him, you can fight with him. That's okay. But if he shows up as a Gilui Eliyahu in Ruchnius, that doesn't help you. If he shows up flesh and blood, so then you can pass him based on what he says. Nothing wrong with that. That's how the Chasam Sofer writes. Okay, so the Rambam says that we're going to get smicha back by having the Rabbanim and Eretz Yisrael getting together. The majority opinion, it seems, of the Rishonim is that smicha is coming back. Maybe like the Rambam says, but if not, then certainly Eliyahu Hanavi is going to show up and he's going to give smicha.
How does the Rambam pass it to Ben Mikdash when Mashiach comes? He says we're supposed to build it, or he says
we're going to build it, Pashat.
So that's probably why he passed it that same way
with the Sanhedrin.
Yeah, with the Sanhedrin.
Love
Because
the
you need the Sanhedrin first, right? So then you can
No,
have the
so
oil and then you can have the Ben Mikdash.
so we don't know. We don't know.
Building fund first.
We don't know exactly what the order is. And the Rambam says that nobody's entirely sure how this is going to roll out, and anybody that says that they know is an
No,
idiot.
but he's passing in one way. He said we're going to.
The pasha that we're going to build it. By the way, and we've learned this Aruch LaNer before. The Aruch LaNer points out in Masechah Sukkah that this machlokes Rashi, what they say is the machlokes Rashi and Rambam, whether the Beis Hamikdash is going to be built by human hands or it's going to come down from Shemaim. And so the Aruch LaNer says it's not a machlokes. Both of them are true. We're going to build the goof of the Beis Hamikdash, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to inspire it with the Shechina. That's the neshama. That's both of them are true. It's no machlokes. Both of them are true. We're going to build it. We're going to build it by hand, and then it's going to be inspired with Ruchnis Min Hashemayim. It's an interesting thing to point out that people don't realize this. The Rambam writes that Mashiach is going to build the Beis Hamikdash, meaning we're going to have Mashiach. Mashiach is going to fight wars. He's going to gather the Jewish people together into Eretz Yisrael, and he's going to build the Beis Hamikdash. However, that's not muskam to everybody. Meaning that's machlokes in the Tanaim, it's machlokes in the Midrashim. There's a famous song that people like to sing that is based on, at least nusach is a little different, but based on at least one of the popular Midrashim about Mashiach and the Beis Hamikdash. What's the song? B'shah shemelech HaMashiach. B'shah shemelech HaMashiach. Mashmiel Yisrael v'Amir is going to announce to the Jewish people, Anavim is going to show up when we have a Beis Hamikdash already. We're going to build it before Mashiach arrives. It's an interesting shot, right? How's it going to roll out? We don't know. We don't know how exactly it's going to be. At some point in time, however, we are going to definitely need smicha from somebody. Now, it happens to be that practically one of the most difficult questions that we're going to have to figure out is where to build the Beis Hamikdash. You're going to tell me, where are you going to build the Beis Hamikdash? On Har HaBayis, yes? But where on Har HaBayis? Not so simple. Because we don't know how big Har HaBayis is. We know that Har HaBayis is tak al tak amma. It's 500 by 500 ammas. How big is an amma? Right. Or 23 point, right? That's a pretty significant delta when you times it by 500. Where is the Beis Hamikdash supposed to go?
Is it on the exact same spot as before?
So, according to Moshe Rishonim, yes. There's an interesting shita that the Beis Hamikdash might not even be built on what we call today Har HaBayis. Which, not for now. That's a shit for another day.
Mars.
What?
We'll build it on Mars.
Yeah.
But build it where?
A few miles north.
Why? Because that's not the right spot.
No, because maybe the third Beis Hamikdash will be in a different location. That's a separate challenge that some of the Rishonim deal with in Sefer HaChinuch. But not for now. That's a long shit for another time. Meaning, maybe. Okay. Pashtus is that's how we're going to get a Sanhedrin back. Somehow or another, we're going to need to get a Sanhedrin back. We're also at some point going to need to figure out how big an Amma is and where to build the Beis Hamikdash and how all of these things are going to roll out. But you don't need a Beis Hamikdash in order to be kover the Chodashim al pi ha're'iyah, right?
I'm gonna have the. I don't want to just you can say yes or no because I don't want to jump off. But are the Shvat and the tribes going to come back in time Mashiach, or we're pretty much all going to be one with the exception of Panem and Libyan?
You got
Yes or no?
maybe it's machlokes. Machlokes.
Another time.
It's a three-way machlokes in the Mishnayos.
That's another share.
Sanhedrin Kuf Yud. Three machlokes in the Mishnayos. Whether it's going to be Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that the 10 Shvatim are never coming back. It's over. Rabbi Elazar is of the opinion that they're absolutely coming back, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is of the opinion that it depends on whether they are well behaved.
That's going, or the Jews?
No, the 10 tribes. Yeah. So again, we spoke about the Ethiopians within the context of. We haven't done that. They are beyond the Hari HaChoshech, the mountains of darkness, on the other side of the Nahar Sambatyon River. That's how the Psukim describe it. Chazal have a lot to say about the Nahar Sambatyon. Remind me another time. That's we'll put this in the hopper of shurim that we need to give at some point, right? It is there's the Baruch Hashem. There's I told you, give me 10 years, we'll get through major sugyas. That's you got to roll. Okay. The question then is okay. So we don't do today Kiddush al pi ha're'iyah. We don't do this. We have a cheshbon, we have a calculation. What happened to the Kiddush al pi ha're'iyah? It is gone. It's gone. But the goal is to get it back. The goal is to get it back. That is what we are attempting to do. Okay. Now, yes, but I mean, in addition to the calendar, we're also going to have witnesses because everything has a calendar, but the calendar has a delta of. Yeah, apparently, meaning the you're talking the tzdukim and the people that were messing up. Yeah, the ideal is to have the calendar. Even when the tzdukim were messing it up, they still did Kiddush al pi ha're'iyah. It's just communicating that was much more complicated. It used to be that they did it Lord of the Rings style, right, with lighting the fires and right. When I teach this sugya of Kiddush HaChodesh to kids in high school, I always play that clip. It's just. I'll tell you.
You've seen the movie? It's so
Well, so that's that. It happens to be that in recent years,
edition clip,
right? Push it. It happens to be that I think my 9th graders weren't born when Lord of the Rings was made.
It was like the early 2000s.
Right? Now, that's when you start feeling really old.
But at least some of them could have read it. They could have read the books. No,
impossible.
no one.
Impossible.
He teaches
No,
Impossible. Nobody reads
it requires reading.
Really.
Requires reading. It's no, never. But yeah, you light the fires, and then the Tzedukim messed it up, and the whole thing went to hell in a handbasket, and then they had to have the messages, which is why we have Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios today, because it was kept up from the minhag of Asenu B'Yadenu.
You don't have to answer this now, but something to think about. Why would the Tzedukim try and confuse us if we had a calculation?
No, they wanted to try and show that Pesach was always on a Shabbos.
No, but they knew we had the calculation,
right?
So they would never be successful.
No, but what they wanted to do was try to force it.
Oh, try to override, like an override.
Right.
Okay.
They would show up.
Gotcha.
They would show up, and they would, or they would show up, and they would do hakashta. They would deny that those Adim were the whole thing.
Delay it and then.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
They were constantly trying to mess the calendar. Now this question becomes even more significant because Medina de Araisa, one is allowed to violate Shabbos to travel from, meaning assuming Tchum is deraisa, but to travel from on a Shabbos to get to Yerushalayim in order to testify Eidos HaChodesh. It's Mechalalim Shabbos le'Eidos HaChodesh.
By just breaking the boundary, or
The
in
tchum.
theory getting into a car. and
So
going.
that's a separate question. We'll get to that. What the Gedarim are. Also the Chachamim downgraded that heter once became more complicated. But the fundamental question that we have to address is, what is the value of these Eidim? They don't add anything. They don't add anything. And to this end, I'll show you something very beautiful here. And we'll explain a little bit. This is part of a much longer piece. This is the Nezer Yishol. This is Rav Avram Tzvi Kluger, who's Rosh Medrash. He's got a whole situation going on in Beit Shemesh. He actually came to Boca a couple of weeks ago. It's a tremendous guy in Tzaddik, with like dozens and dozens of Sfarim going on. I think he's officially Breslov, but like across the border and Bucky and everything. He's a very, very special Jew. Before we get into this piece, there's something very beautiful to understand here. Is when the 30th day of the month arrived, what did every single Jew spend the night doing? If you were within a day's journey of Yerushalayim,
Look up at the sky.
everybody's outside. Everybody was outside looking for the moon. I saw it. And you can imagine there were probably big communities of people that all saw it, and they would all travel to Yerushalayim, a convoy to Yerushalayim, right? So that hundreds of people that would show up in Yerushalayim to say, we saw the new moon. But the point is that everybody was outside. They were looking for the Levana. And there were some big Talmidei Chachamim. They knew exactly where to look, right? They knew exactly where to look. And don't look there. Look at that. You see it at the top of that mountain. And then people knew. And then they would travel to Yerushalayim. It was like a beautiful thing. Beautiful. Like this coalescence of Klal Yisrael moving to Yerushalayim after seeing the Levana. The process of knowing this calculation, of doing the calculation, is called by Chazal as Soid HaIbur, the secret of the Ibra Chodesh, of the rebirth of the new moon, the Soid HaIbur. The Gemara says in Ksuvas Kufi Beis that this was one of the 3 oaths that the Jewish people took, the Shalosh Shavuos, or the most often quoted in anti-Zionist literature, Shelo Yalu B'Chayma, not to go up to Eretz Yisrael as a wall. The second was that the nations of the world we shouldn't rebel against the nations of the world. And the third was that we shouldn't reveal our secrets. What secret? The Soid HaIbur, the secret of the calculation of Rosh Chodesh. And then comes along the Rambam, Paskins.
There's so many societies have.
Excellent. Right? More than that.
Or just Google it. And you'll
Right.
see how to do it.
Correct. Or you open the Rambam, who writes exactly how to do it. So the Rambam violated the Shavua of the Gemara. Correct? Impossible. So what exactly is this? What is the Soid HaIbur? Okay. If you take a look on this page over here, you say Uvarambam Perik Yud Aleph. We're like 7 lines down. It says Uvarambam Perik Yud Aleph Kosov Shesoid HaIbur Heim HaCheshbon Sheherich Sham Bazet. The Soid HaIbur is the calculation of when to figure out Rosh Chodesh. It says Tzarich Rabir. You have to explain. Dimkin Eicha Rambam Kosov Zeh HaSoid L'Chol Bayonim. How did the Rambam write this whole secret for everybody in the world, just to figure out? He says B'Chol Chachmei Omer Shechalim L'Kor B'Yad HaChazaka. Right, every non-Jew in the world can now open up a Rambam, and Maimonides says that this is how you calculate the new moon. We're on page Kuf Mem Hey. You have it there? No, the other page. There's 2 pages there.
No, I don't have it.
You don't have it. Somebody's probably got 2. See if you've got 3 pages there. What?
That's it.
There you go. Good. So he says. He says, furthermore, you also need to explain the Mashma Sham B'Ksuvas in Ksuvas Kufi Beis, the Yishkechu Soid HaIbur B'Gol that we will forget the Soid HaIbur when we go into exile. That's how the Gemara implies that when we go into exile, we shouldn't reveal it, but we're going to end up forgetting it. Ve'echas of Rambam said Ibur. Then how did the Rambam know it? If we forgot it in exile, it says Kiddush HaChodesh the Maharal mi Prague, and the Maharal writes in the Kiddush HaChodesh and that Gemara. It says, "Kasav dezeu asod shel kol Yisrael." This is the great secret of the Jewish people. We are not allowed to reveal this to the nations of the world, so that we don't end up mixing up with the non-Jews. This is how we retain Jewish identity in Galus, not telling them the secret of Rosh Chodesh. What does that even mean? It says, well, once you reveal your secrets, you lose your identity, right? Because then everybody knows everything about you, so there's nothing secret, there's nothing special about him. It says, okay, but what does he mean by this? Like, what are you supposed to do with all of this information? So he writes as follows, quoting from Rabbi Nachman and Likutei Moharan in Teres Samach Aleph, you see in Osid Aleph, the next paragraph. He says, Kasav, b'soid ha'ibur, what is the secret of the ibur, of Rosh Chodesh? It says, the be'etzem, hari amru chazal she'es ha'chachma tzarech le'odiyah. We have to teach chachma, wisdom. It says, the pasuk says that the Jewish people's wisdom is that this is our wisdom in the eyes of the nations of the world. The pasuk in Megillas Esther refers to the Sanhedrin as being these people that Achashverosh goes to speak to, the Chachamim Yodeh Hayitim, the wise men that knew the times, says the Gemara Megillah. That's the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin in exile, right? Mordechai was part of the Sanhedrin. Achashverosh went to go. So in our side, it has to be that doing the mechanical calculation is not the secret. That's not the secret of Sod HaIbur. So Sha'asod Nishar Etzlin, because if it's Le'enei Ha'amim, if it's visible to the nations of the world, then that's not ours. It says the Ta'aluchas HaGalgalim Hu Al Yedei Sichlim, because the movement of the celestial bodies is a process that is intelligent, meaning you can figure it out. It says Shehem HaMalachim, and these are governed by Malachim, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom pre-programming reality. But all of these seemingly independent celestial bodies are all governed by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Hashem is controlling everything. This is the collective wisdom and knowledge of the entirety of the world. That beyond all of the specifics of every star and orbit and atmosphere and the neshama of the universe. There is wisdom that governs the entirety of the universe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has programmed. This, by the way, understanding the laws physically of this neshama that governs the universe is still ad hayom hazeh an open question in science. As much as we know everything that we know about science, there's still an open question in physics today, which is how to be miyashev the stira. There's a fundamental stira between what they call the standard model of physics and quantum physics. Standard model of physics makes tremendous sense for like all local stuff going on. When it gets like very, 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 very small particles, the standard model of physics breaks down entirely. Like everything that we know about, like Newton's laws of motion and forces that work equal and opposite effects, all of that, thermodynamics, all of that falls apart at subatomic particle levels. There, quantum physics works. Nobody knows how to make a shidduch between these two fields of physics. This is like every major course in PhD physics going on today. It's like figuring this out. String theory was very popular for a long time. It's not so popular at the moment. But no. Multiple worlds theories, alternate universes, like this is where physics is like, well, There's not a lot that we have to say that Marvel hasn't worked on already. Like that's basically, it's true. It's a really crazy thing. Like we have no idea. There's a lot of calculations that people are doing, but a lot of experiments and bashing atoms together and like large hadron collider, and like we've discovered a lot of things. We have no idea how to fit these theories of physics together. The neshama kulam misnagim al yada, to figure out. I mean, and even beyond that, there's so much that we don't know about the universe. There's a neshama of the universe, which is the seichel that Hashem, has put collectively into everything. Right? There's the seichel of the universe that the Rebbeinu Shalom has inspired the universe with. So Zubira in Neshama Chazal, that's what Chazal mean in Sanhedrin. Ve'agam shechazal amru ze al Kiddush Levana. This is all about Kiddush Levana. We say this about Kiddush Levana, which is what we do, right? Like what we did Matzah Shabbos, because some have the minhag of doing it on Tisha B'Av, Matzah Tisha B'Av. Matzah Tisha B'Av was very cloudy, so Matzah Shabbos we did Kiddush Levana. Chazal said that's what we're discovering by Kiddush Levana. But this is really about Kiddush HaChodesh that the Chachamim would do in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Sanhedrin. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. Top of the next column, it says, "Ilmalu lezochu yishol lemitzvahs acheres ela lezu shemekablim pnei shechina pam achas b'chodesh dayom." If the Jewish people could only experience Kabbalas pnei shechina, to be able to receive the shechina, to be able to experience the shechina once a month, that would be enough. That's what we do when we do Kiddush Levana. That's in fact the text that we say. If the Jewish people could only receive the Shekhinah once a month, that would be enough for us. And there's a halacha to that. Hilchach tzarech la'amrei me'umad. Therefore, you have to say it standing up. The Mishnah Berurah points out that this is also the reason that you have to say Kiddush Levana outside. Sama akev. If you said it inside, you're still yotz. If you said it through a window, sama akev. But the Mishnah Berurah writes the reason that we go outside for Kiddush Levana is because we're greeting the Shekhinah. When you greet somebody, you go outside to greet them, right? You don't sit inside and have royal procession going on outside. You wave from the window. No, you go outside. You saw the inauguration of Charles. So everybody was outside waving flags. You go outside. You go outside to greet royalty. So he says, the pasuk says by HaChodesh hazeh lachem, and ze keli vanvehu. That's the Gzera Shavah that the Gemara makes. That the same way that the Klal Yisrael, when crossing Yam Suf, experienced the Rebbeinu Shalom, ze keli vanvehu. This is my God. Wow, I can experience the Rebbeinu Shalom. So too, we go out to greet the Shechina by Kiddush Levana. Says Mavur midivre Chazal elu deriyas alavana v'kiddush hachodesh ki kabbalas pnei avinish b'shamayim. When we go out for Kiddush Levana, or originally when all Jews would go out on the night of Rosh Chodesh to go look for the moon, what were they looking for? What were they looking for? Kabbalas Pnei HaShechina. They were going out to see the light in the darkness. As a national movement, once a month, every Jew, parents would keep their kids up, right? Don't go to bed. No. Tonight. You see last night there was no moon. Tonight we're going to go out and see it. And you're going to know that no matter how bad anything is in life, that there's always a return. And that in all of the darkness, that the Rebbeinu Shalom always gives us light.
This was so not just men, women, children.
Everybody. Right? Now, for the technical edus, you need two men to show up.
I'm saying it was a national.
But this was clearly a national event, right?
Looking at this community, right? What is the difference then between 3 days prior when the moon was getting smaller and you were still also seeing the Shekhinah because you were seeing the light
diminishing?
Yeah, but you were still seeing it.
No, it's the Chiddush. It's the Chiddush. You're seeing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Mechadesh Chadashim.
The light in the dark. So this is
No, it's
so the light among the
no. It was dark last night. There was no
Yeah,
Levana.
no, there's no.
Now there's a Kiddush of the light.
It was 0, and now it's 1. From 0 to 1.
Well, there was
from-
nothing. There was
Not
nothing.
from 3 down to 2 down to 1.
So it's not looking at the Shekhinah, the light among the dark.
It's the new light,
It's
The
the
Chiddush.
new light is what it is.
right? Which is why the bracha that we make is Mechadesh Chadashim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is
So why
Mechadesh.
is the new light any better if the prior month had better luck?
What do you mean I have better luck?
What the Zohar says each month is what.
Yeah,
five,
so that's only in Golos.
only in those.
In Golos. When the Beis Hamikdash was standing, there was no we don't have
Tammuz
to.
was a good month.
Yeah, absolutely. All the months were wonderful.
No, you're right. They didn't.
Right? There were no
fighting
fights.
on-
Correct.
on Tisha B'Av.
That's it. So the Yisrael Nimshal Levana, and the Jewish people are referred to as the Levana. The Goyim Anim Lachama. The non-Jews are the sun. Now that's the Klal Yisrael goes up and down. That's the same. Which means, and this is the piece that's fundamental to understand here, is that, and he says this on the next page, I think, that let's see, yeah. Take a look on the next page. Osher Dalad. Kiddush HaChodesh Yesod Kol HaTorah. So he says, Lefi zeh navin dihine Rashi v'Reishis Amar v'Yitzchak loy haya tzarich lahatzchel HaTorah ela me'achodesh hazalachem. Rashi famously says that we should have started the Torah with HaChodesh hazeh, right? Chodesh hazalachem Rosh Chodeshim. Dahainu shezel re'iyas his galus HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'amai u'mitzvah rishana. This is Hashem appearing to the Jewish people, first time. That's Kabbalah's Pnei Shechina. Start the Torah not with creation of the world. Root mitzvah. It's a fundamental mitzvah. This is the entirety of what a human being does in this world. The moon, which is emblematic of the Jewish people and our trials and tribulations, up and down, waxing and waning. And the Shekhinah, the presence of Hashem, which is the emunah, that the light is coming. This is hidden. It's hidden, it's shrouded in darkness at the end of the month. This is the secret of all hiddenness in the entirety of creation. What we explained last week, the shrinking of the moon. Right? The shrinking of the moon means that the moon waxes and wanes. It's not consistent. We don't have a consistent light at night. It says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows Moshe, when you see just a sliver of light, that is already Kiddush HaChodesh. This is the secret of being an Eved Hashem. That the Rebbe Shalom is speaking to us in darkness. Just a little bit of light. זהו על ידי כך הצדיקים שמאירים קרן אור של תקווה בתוך החושך, ויוצא מזה, ובזה שיש שני עדים כשרים בסוף ארץ ישראל, שיודעים על איזה אור, כבר מאירים האור הזה לכל ישראל. This is so beautiful. He says, what comes out from this is that if two Jews somewhere in Eretz Yisrael saw that light, it means it's there for everybody. Two Jews that spotted it. The cloudiest of nights, there were two Jews that, 16-hour walk from Yerushalayim that saw the Levana. I don't know, maybe somebody else did, maybe somebody else didn't. They're the only two Jews. They were walking back from a Tish late Friday night. They travel on Shabbos to Yerushalayim to say the light is back. Because so long as two Jews see it, everybody sees it.
Do they have to be together in order to be two?
Probably,
One,
yes.
one?
Yes. So, meaning in order to be Mechalel Shabbos, you would need that. But if you saw it on a regular weekday, then yeah, you go by yourself.
But you could be one of two witnesses even though.
Yes, you didn't have to say it at the same. Yeah. There's There's two Jews that the real secret of the Jewish people is the national capacity to do this. That's what we've lost in Galus. That's the thing that we've lost. What we can do in Galus is a cheshbon. We can make a calculation. We can say, there is light, I can't see it now. It's invisible to me. There's light. This does make sense, but like whenever Khalil tragedies happen, we say, the Rebbeinu Shalom has his ways. He understands the world. We don't understand the world the way that Hashem understands the world. Right?
We do a little bit Kiddush HaChodesh.
No, what I'm saying. So what we do is a Kain. We do a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah.
We do a Kiddush Levana, but that's at least 3 days after the light has begun to shine. Right?
It's not the first.
It's not at the moment, because at the moment we can't say. We can say, the light has begun to shine again. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has, so we can do that. Hello, Squishy, are you okay? What do you need? Yeah, Mommy's waiting for you. And then I'll come and snuggle you in a few minutes, okay? Yes. Don't wake up Yuri, okay? Thank you. She's very cute. Baruch Hashem. So this is the side. Is that there's two things that are operating. There is the cheshbon, which is the Klal Yisrael's mind, brain power that we can calculate. There's going to be light. There's going to be light. You have all of the seminars, the Chabad and Eshatar and Ar Sameach. It can explain to you that even though the world is so dark and it doesn't make sense, there's really light, and if you understand, then you know, good. But to see it, to experience that light, that we don't have in Galus.
But
That's
why
what's
don't
missing.
we institute that to go and look at it? Because
We need
as
the-
you say,
need the
the more
Sanhedrin.
you say, the more you fake it, the more you.
Yeah, but
You
we
fake
are.
it to make it. You've
we
said
are-
that many,
we
many
are-
times. Why
yes.
don't you do that? Eventually, you'll start getting.
So we do a little bit. We have Kiddush Levana. What we are lacking is the capacity.
The national thing. So you make
Yes.
a thing where you have
Right.
everybody got to go out and got to look.
But we don't have a base in Osmuchim, and we don't have Klal Yisrael represented in Eretz
No,
Yisrael.
but you can bring it.
But the basin is always, the basin is always helping people see the
There's
light.
already a-
Yeah, the basin verifies that what you saw is real.
That's part of the experience.
Right. Meaning, so you have two things that are happening simultaneously. You have say what? And correct. Well, and then you have the Chachamim that are verifying it. Meaning, correct. Is what you saw light? Is what you saw Kiddush HaChodesh? Is what you saw the beginning? You're looking for it. Everybody's looking for it. We're going to verify that what you saw is real. Because sometimes it happens that people have, enlightenment and it's totally nonsense. Is the light that you saw real? This was a national experience month by month. And there was a big simcha. The Rambam writes that they would make a Sudas Rosh Chodesh. They make a big simcha about it. It's a big simcha that everybody would get together and have a big suda. They would say the light has returned, and this was like an experience of a shtickl Yom Tov every single month that all of Klal Yisrael was involved in. And there was even, because of this, like a Ke'en Aliyah L'Regel. If you saw the light, you went to Yerushalayim. If you saw it, you went. Right? Yeah, you had to be looking for it. But even if you didn't look for it, as long as there's two Jews somewhere that are looking for it, that found it, that can go and tell Beis Din, we saw it, and the Beis Din can verify what you saw is real. So, Mekudesh. What you see from this is that what these two pieces of the halacha are essential to the experiential reality called Sod HaIbur. The constant process of renewal of the Jewish people, month after month after month after month after month, that is supposed to be both intellectual and experiential. These two things are supposed to be one and the same. What we are lacking today is the full-fledged experiential aspect of Yiddishkeit. And this is what we said in the Kiddush HaChodesh, ve'ein shir rak haTorah hazos. What we have left of Torah is Beis Medrash. We've got the intellectual piece. The experiential piece is lacking. That we are missing. That's called Galus. We're lacking the experience. Now, we have a lot of things that are emblematic and symbolic and zecher and etc. But ain't nobody going to tell you that sitting at a Seder, as beautiful as it is the same thing as camping out on Hari Yehuda and bringing a sheep to the Beit HaMikdash. Right?
We have potato bread hamburgers. We don't have a lamb.
Right. We got a sandwich, Zecher LeMikdash Kehillel, but we don't have a Hillel sandwich. Right?
If you miss night one, you do night right, you come as a witness night two or night three.
No.
Oh, you can't do this.
No.
We know if it's missing.
No,
No, I know you know if you missed it.
Exactly.
Right.
That's why I was asking that question.
No.
I thought you would still do it.
No.
It's passed.
You've missed.
So if it's cloudy and that's it, you lost the chance for that night.
So Beis Din could be Mekadesh without Re'iyah. They could.
Yeah.
They could be Mekadesh without Re'iyah. But the mitzvah is to be Mekadesh al Re'iyah.
So if you live more than a day's walk,
Then you don't
no
go.
ways you could participate.
So there's a shayla. Can they be Mekadesh the Chodesh L'Mafreya? That's a big shayla. Could they be Mekadesh tomorrow based on the testimony of today? That's an important shayla. And there's different. Clearly, you need. But the point is that your experiential life is real. That what you're witnessing when you go outside at night is HaKadosh Baruch Hu shining his face on Klal Yisrael once again. And you see that with Kiddush HaChodesh. And that's Kabbalah's Pnei Shechina. And everybody would go outside. Baruch Hashem. The same way, by the way, that people daven kevasikin. You wait for sunrise in the morning. It's the same idea. That people would wait for sunrise in the morning, or right,
this connection
to the natural world. That people would resonate with the natural world and feel godliness within that. Or what the Mekubalim instituted, that Pnei Shabbos Nekabala, is that people would go out to greet Shabbos. They would wait to see the sun set. Pnei Shabbos Nekabala. Shabbos has arrived. They would go out to greet. That's Kabbalah's Shabbos Malkasa, greeting the queen. Now, today we have a minute that everybody faces the back of the shul and goes, Shkoch, right?
They used to go out.
He used to go out to the fields. They would say Kabbalah Shabbos. Even in the days of the Gemara, they would go out. They would say, "Boi kala, boi kala, boi Shabbos Malkasa." That's the Gemara in Baba Kama Daf Lamed. Right? They would go out and they would say, "Boi kala, boi kala." That was the original minhag, that people go out. We are disconnected from this completely. The natural world and us, as far as we're concerned, apples grow in Costco.
Is that a byproduct of Galus, or we can bring it back today?
So it's for sure a byproduct of Galus, but it's also a byproduct
Meaning,
of
are
the
we
Yetzer Hara.
supposed to bring it back, or are we supposed to let it go to Mashiach?
No, so it's very clear that Klal Yisrael, with the return to Eretz Yisrael, has returned to not everybody, but on a national level, we are re-engaging with the land as a source of sustenance. We are not connected to.
But that's going to be a thing of the past.
Why?
No, he's saying-
Shemitah and
no,
Yovel?
But Goldberg brought that gentleman, the guy who's growing hydroponic stuff. He says within 10 years it's going to be non-existent.
No,
Yes.
just not a large.
No, you will never, ever have to worry about Shemitah. According to him, because the stuff
So-
is not growing on the land, it's growing through the water.
so while
Only
it
trees might
while
be
it is
growing.
true, again, while it is true,
It's like the power.
While it is true that you could get around the halachas of Shemitah, Rav Kook wrote, even when he wrote the heter for the heter mechira, he said the ikar is that we should grow trees and
Okay.
and produce to be mekayim the mitzvah.
But if the best way you get the most productivity.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that it's the end of Shemitah and Yovel. It's certainly not the end of Shemitah and Yovel on a level of Derabanan, meaning if Shemitah would be Deraisa, which it isn't today. It's a shaila if hydroponics would not be Derabanan.
What bracha do you?
On what?
Hydroponic people on.
It's a good shaila.
Let's no, it's a trio. You can't
You can't hide.
right now you can't.
There's no hydroponic trees
So,
yet.
How do you pass it?
Probably Bar
You
Peradam.
say Shakol, or you say
No, Bar Peradam.
So
It's a
Rabbi says Shakol.
Yeah, it's a shaila. It's a shaila in the poskim. Again, it depends if it's a nakov, it's a she'ena nakov, whether it has any kind of hazana from the karka. There's 1,000 shalas. There's 1,000 shalas that all the poskim deal with. But that notwithstanding, we will at some point in time get back to a world that we are not hiding from the natural world, that we're working together with it. Today we are hiding from the natural world. Welcome to air conditioning and concrete walls. But there is something very valuable about being in touch with the natural world, and trying to be mitake in the natural world. And that's the job of the Jewish people in a state of geula, which we're going to get to. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach. In Golus, we can discuss it academically. Geula is the real deal, and that's Kiddush HaChodesh. And that Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach we will return to. As we mentioned some of the guys at the beginning, I think next week we're off, and then the week after we are going to resume with our next sugya, which we're going to jump ahead, 4 books of the Torah to Sefer Dvarim to talk about the mitzvah of tshuva, because that'll be in advance of Yom Noraim. And everybody should have a wonderful evening.
All right.
Shkach to the guys online.